Why do you use the same type of apps, but several different ones? Isn't that too much? Isn't that an overkill? Isn't that, too complicated? So in this episode, I wanted to share this with you and to go back and forth about it, and to prove my point that actually using different apps for different purposes makes perfect sense. Hello, I'm Michael.
I'm Radek.
And this is The Podcast,
a sounding board for interesting ideas and insights. We discuss books you read and want to share with you,
as well as technology and productivity, which is what we do by day, working on our app, Nozbe.
Or whatever else comes to mind.
Yes, and today we have a follow-up discussion on note-taking.
Yeah, and I've heard other iOS-related topics as well.
Exactly. But because, we've been through all this, and actually our note-taking discussions always have been quite surprising. So like you wanted to ask me a few questions about Evernote, and then there was the whole episode of me going paperless, which also inspired you to go paperless in a different way with different apps, which of course inspired me to change my ways as well, as it happens on this show. So, I have some follow-up on that.
Yeah, we were going to talk about note-taking quite some time ago, but we never really talked about note-taking because it turned out that you just showed off your paperless document scanning system, and I was like blown away because it was so obvious in retrospect. And yeah, so what's your follow-up? Where do we start?
Yeah, so the thing is that apart from note-taking and stuff, we also share our morning routines and evening routines and journaling, and we will link to all these episodes in the show notes and your Magic Spreadsheet. So all this stuff, and all this stuff is connected, intertwined, because we use apps for that. And and not only Nozbe, other apps as well. And that's the key thing. I wrote a blog post on my blog indicating my workflows to do the morning routine and evening routine and everything else. And then I mentioned several apps I use for note-taking, just by accident, right? And then I got feedback from people on Twitter saying, Michael, you're the productivity guy. You should be using, one app to rule them all and not so many apps. This is counterproductive. This is crazy. Why do you use the same type of apps, but several different ones? Isn't that too much? Isn't that an overkill? Isn't that, too complicated? So in this episode, I wanted to share this with you and to go back and forth about it, and to prove my point that actually using different apps for different purposes makes perfect sense.
Oh, that's really interesting, because I'm looking at my sort of note-taking system in the broadest possible sense, and there's some stuff I keep in Apple Notes. There's some handwritten notes in Linnea. I used to have paper notebooks, though I don't do that anymore. There's Bear, there's AI Writer. There's some stuff on Dropbox Paper. There's some random stuff on Google Docs. I have a whiteboard in my office, and it's unsatisfying to have so many tools for this. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, so before, the thing is that before everything, as you know, Evernote was my go-to app. It was one note-taking app to rule them all. It was my way of going paperless. It was my way of putting notes together. It was like that for a reason, because it was the pioneer of these kind of apps that everything synced. It had a very good iOS app and Mac app. So I had everything in sync, everything in the cloud, everything paperless, everything nice. But the thing is that right now, we have the variety of apps on the App Store is just tremendous. It's amazing what we have now. And I think we are at this phase that we can indulge ourselves into actually using the best apps for their best purpose for us. So it's I would like to use this app for this just purpose, and then the other one for the other purpose. And because they are just apps, and they are and they basically, essentially, in my case, sync using iCloud, so I have the information everywhere anyway. It doesn't really matter that there are different apps. For me, these are like different containers. But I like the features that particular apps have for their for why I need them.
Especially I guess in iOS 11, it depends. Not all apps, but some apps like just writing apps will just create documents in iCloud Drive. And in iOS 11, all of your iCloud Drive stuff is available to all of the other apps that are document based. So in this sort of sphere, it's interchangeable, right?
Just like you made a perfect example with ScanBot, that you started using ScanBot because what it does, it creates a standard PDF that goes to the iCloud Drive, so you can access the PDF from everywhere. You can import it to anything you want. If you want to put it into Evernote, you can still put it into Evernote, no problem. If you want to put it somewhere else, no problem. So for me, this is really cool. And as I said, there are many different apps that serve they have very good feature set for one thing only, and for one thing that appeals to me. So for example, as you mentioned, Apple Notes is right now a very good all-around note-taking thing. It just takes different types of notes. It syncs with the iCloud to any notes app on the Mac and iPhone and iPad. So it's very versatile. It easily in note taking, like random note taking thing, it easily surpasses Evernote. It's just very easy to use, and it's native and it's everywhere. So it's very, very easy. As you mentioned, ScanBot is very good for going paperless because it creates these PDFs that have OCR. So it's very useful. And I am right now converting myself to ScanBot, and it's going really well. But for example, for other note taking, right now all my long writing, like really when I write texts, articles, I write them first in Ulysses, because Ulysses. Okay. Has a very nice repository of writing. It's very nicely done. I don't have to deal with files. I have just pieces of writing together. I can glue them together. I can import them together. I can export them to PDF to any format I want. So for me, for example, long writing, this is Ulysses. Everything starts from there. I mean, I write everything in Ulysses, so it's very useful, and I have now all my writing there, so it's pretty convenient. And from there, again, I can also export as a text file to Dropbox or to a blog post or whatever. So for example, Ulysses for that, like for writing using Markdown, and I just really enjoy writing using Markdown. It's fantastic. I use it as my main thing. And then there is Bear, which also wants to be your note-taking app, but thanks to your ideas of using workflow and everything, I use it only for daily kind of journaling, like not really journaling. It's like daily seeing how my day went, because it has a very nice support of a checklist. So it's very useful to put your most important things to do this day. And also I have this additional workflow that I recreate the day and see how each of half an hour of my day went, so I can really track my progress and track my productivity. So I use Bear only for that. So it creates a special note only for one day, and then it creates a special note for another day, and that's it. I don't use it for anything else. But for this kind of purpose, because it works well with workflow, and because it creates all these workflows, it creates all these templates, it's very useful. And again, it's when I open this app, I open it just for this reason, to just review my day. So this is Bear. And then MindNote, I use right now MindNote as my brainstorming app. I like mind mapping, and this is my favorite one. It's very beautiful. It's very nice. And I even created like a iPhone X template with pitch black background. So it's very, very cool. And I think in mind maps. So very often, if I outline an article, I outline it in a mind map first, and then I export it to Ulysses, to Markdown, and then I have it. I just have to fill in the blanks. So it's very, very useful. And then from there, I can export to Pages or to PDF or wherever I have to send the article to. So again, I use each app for each unique purpose and then export it further and further and further. So for me, this is not contradictory to use different apps. It's just more productive, and it's just it creates like a natural process and natural workflow.
Okay, so let me tell you what apps I use. So for me also, Apple Notes is the sort of all-around note-taking app. If I have just something super random to take a note of, I use that. So when I'm listening to an audiobook, I want to just quickly append to the draft of the note of whatever book I'm reading. And then after that, I take it and sort of synthesize it to be a bit nicer. I use it for travel documents and accounting documents. So when I have stuff that I want to easily be available online, PDFs, I found that the easiest way to do it is just to drag and drop it to notes, because if I put it to iCloud Drive or Dropbox, I'm not sure if it syncs for sure, if it stays sort of downloaded.
That's a good.
And if I put it to notes, then if I open it and it's there, it will stay there. Like it will never sort of delete it from cache. So is it for that? I have some random notes that I use as reference for weekly reviews for journaling, like my year plan, the list of books for this year, the values, the key points from previous quarterly offsites, and I have just some random notes sort of all around. So that's notes, and I'm not fully satisfied with it because it's just like few very different things, and some of them just don't have a good home. That's why they're there. I also use Linnea, which is sort of my sketching app, but I mostly use it on my iPad with Apple Pencil for handwritten notes and for sketches. During meetings, sometimes when I'm taking notes, I do handwritten notes. When I'm designing something, when I'm trying to figure something out, some engineering problem, and I want to think sort of visually, then I use Linnea. I actually barely ever these days use my whiteboard, just because it's sort of easier with pencil on my iPad. I don't use mind maps. That never appealed to me. When I want to sketch something out mind map style, this is usually also handwritten in Linnea.
So just to stop you here, because I also use Linnea thanks to you. Mm-hmm. So I used to sketch notes in Apple Notes, but I find them really nicer in Linnea. So yes, again, I sketch notes there, and I like the layer support. So it's very, very useful for me. Very often I can then put additional layer and just additional notes, and then I can always remove them and to make it more readable. So yes, Linnea is very cool, and I could completely recommend it. And this is the one, again, when I with my Apple Pencil, this is the app I'm going with.
Yeah. Again, I used to use paper notebooks, but I don't do that anymore. I moved all of that to Linnea on my iPad. I also use Bear, again, as a dedicated app for automation. So I only use it through workflow. So for my daily plans and weekly plans, which we've discussed before, we'll just link to the show notes. There's a workflow that shows me the plan for today, for tomorrow, and for the week. And I use Bear for that for two reasons. First of all, it's easily automatable. And second of all, it has these really nice checkboxes, as you mentioned. Like no other app has like good sort of in-note, inline checkboxes. And it works really well for like daily plan. For long-form writing, mostly journaling, like long-form journaling, I use AI Writer. Pretty few lists, but I don't know. I've been using AI Writer for like 7 years or something. It works. And then there's some like a few random places. So Dropbox Paper we use at work for documentation. We used to use Confluence.
Exactly, yeah. I forgot about that one. We use Dropbox Paper a lot for documentation in our company, yes.
Yeah, it's so. We haven't found a better solution.
And that's the problem. I mean, for team documentation, really, it's I think still it's an open market because there are so many apps. There are many apps for that they have popped up, but most of them are just rubbish. And we think that Dropbox Paper is the least rubbish right now.
Yeah, the least rubbish is the best way to put it. It has really nice writing experience, but for organizing lots of documents in a company, it sucks. Yes. Confluence used to work better at that, but a lot worse in other things. So yeah, but I also have just some random old personal notes in Dropbox Paper. I try using Google Docs for some random things when I needed to share it with people, but sort of outside of work. But it's sort of spread around. It's not super satisfying. I was thinking of actually, like, what if I just used Bear for everything? But my problem is that because I use it for automation, it sort of generates a lot of junk. There's a lot of junk nodes, and I would have to manage them, right?
Yeah.
And this way I don't, because I never actually open Bear. Right? I never look at the list. I only open particular documents and create them through workflows. So that's the problem. Notes can also be a bit annoying for me sometimes. Like one of my problems with having stuff spread around different apps is that they use different formats. So, for example, I'm trying to like figure something out through journaling, and I'm writing in IA Writer, and if I need like some formatting, I use Markdown. But then when I'm like, okay, like I want to store this for later and like want to put it in the notes for future reference. And I have a problem because Notes doesn't use Markdown, it just use rich text formatting. I tried to make a workflow that converts Markdown to rich text, but it messes with new lines. It just breaks a lot of formatting. And Bear also is a bit annoying in that because it uses something that looks like Markdown but is not Markdown. So for example, it uses single asterisks and not double asterisk for bold, which is stupid because everybody uses, like, if you're going to use text-based formatting, then just use what everybody is using.
Yeah, so for that, Ulysses is very good. So in my case, all these apps that I've chosen, they serve their purpose because I know exactly where I have to go if I want to do something. So, for example, like, as again, long writing starts with in Ulysses, or starts even earlier as a mind map that goes to Ulysses to Markdown. So this is what happens, and then my journaling is also done in Markdown in Ulysses and a different, of course, sheet. But the thing is that Ulysses has very nice export options to PDF, to docs, to doc. It doesn't need any workflows for that. I just choose an export option in Ulysses. And that's why I, for example, when I'm writing my monthly column to iMagazine, I write it in Ulysses, export it to Pages, and that's it. And then from Pages, I send, because they want me to send Pages, so I send Pages to them. But I don't write in Pages. I just, for me, this is like the last part is to export it to Pages, review it in Pages, and then send it to them.
Can Ulysses sort of just spit out regular rich text that you can copy and paste to Notes?
Of course, normal rich text, HTML, whatever you want. It's
okay. And can it import rich text and spit out Markdown?
I'm not sure about that. I will have to check.
Okay, and is it automatable?
Of course, I like, for example, my journaling, as you know, it's a workflow that later pastes the whole journal to Ulysses. So of course.
Well, then perhaps I think I have a copy of Ulysses, like the old version of Ulysses back when it was not subscription based. So I have it on my iPad. I never started using it really. Maybe I can connect it through workflow as my Markdown to rich text and rich text to Markdown converter app.
Maybe, but anyway, for me, that's why I like it so much, because when I can write in my Markdown in my in a way that I like, and then send it somewhere else in the way people want it to have, right? So I even managed to to find a way to export Markdown to Google Docs later, which is formatted and everything. So it's it's crazy stuff, but it works very nicely. And in Ulysses, you can create different styles of export. So you can really create your own CSS and whatever if you really want. So it's very, very cool. And what I like about these apps also, and that this new finally working iCloud sync, is the fact that it's iCloud. And iCloud is more native to the iOS and Mac than the Dropbox. So I still use Dropbox, of course. Yes. I mean, and I'm a Dropbox Pro subscriber. I pay Dropbox every year. So that's true. But I used to also sync things with Dropbox. But the problem with syncing with Dropbox is the fact that you have to be online all the time. And I am online all the time. But there are moments where, like, for example, the connection is flaky or whatever. And the cool thing with iCloud Sync is that it syncs first locally, and then it pushes the sync to the cloud.
Yeah.
So you don't mess your document or lose your document or lose whatever you just wrote, and in the sync. Or for example, I had moments like this with my Dropbox sync that I would write something, and then I would through workflow I wanted to save it in Dropbox, and it would just fail because the Dropbox just failed, and it was gone.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's super annoying. Less so in other apps where you're dealing with smaller things, but we'll get to that later. But when I was on the trip to Panama, I had a shared Dropbox folder with my friend where we put all of the PDFs with confirmations, booking confirmations, copies of our plane tickets, like just everything we could have needed in emergencies and not emergencies while not having an internet connection, right?
Yeah.
And we were doing some of the last bits of sort of research and saving of PDFs while on the airport using the crappy Wi-Fi that was there. And it was a horrible experience because there was a lot of stuff to save to Dropbox, and you're using the share extension. And at first just thanks a lot to make a PDF out of the website. It's better in iOS 11 because there's a built-in sort of converter to PDF, and then it thinks a lot to upload it, and you can't do anything else because the share extension is on the screen until the upload is complete.
Exactly.
It's pretty bad. With iCloud Drive, you don't have that problem. I hope that it's going to be better in the future, maybe iOS 12. I mean, in iOS 11, in the Files app, Dropbox is treated almost the same way as iCloud Drive. It's just there. It's like another sort of folder with everything in there. But I guess it still doesn't have the API so that you can just add things there without invoking Dropbox and then have Dropbox sync in the background. Like right now, it's not possible.
Exactly. And with iCloud, it does work like that. So it's really, really useful. And that's why I've basically written all my workflows to use, iCloud-based apps and iCloud-based syncing, because it's just, it's local first, cloud second, which is really, really good.
Yeah, it's very, you can really feel the difference when using ScanBot. So again, the app we now both use to scan bills and other documents we want to have for safekeeping, because you just take a picture and you lock your phone or close the app, and it will still run in the background for a couple of seconds to complete OCR. But essentially, it just immediately spits out the PDF to iCloud Drive, and even if you're online, you don't have to worry about it because it will sync eventually. And if you used ScanBot with Dropbox, which you can, then you have to make sure that you're online.
Yes,
because otherwise it will fail.
Exactly, you have to wait until it really syncs. It really sends the entire document. Yeah, you know that if you have an order with the apps, if you know which apps you use for what, then to your benefit, you're more focused automatically. So in my case, the productivity argument here is that I know that when I'm opening Ulysses, it means I'm going to write a longer thing. If I'm going to Bear, it means I'm going to review my day, the progress of my day, or the big goals I had for the day. If I'm going to MindNote, I'm going to brainstorm. If I'm going to ScanBot, I'm going to go, do something paperless or scan something. If I'm going to Notes, I'm just going to put some random note or whatever. So thanks to this fact, it's just, your mind is more focused, I think. It's like you're opening this app for this purpose. You're not opening this app for every purpose possible. You're opening this app for this purpose. It's like your mind sets itself, aims for something, I don't know. It's hard to say, but I just feel like I'm more productive because if I open this app, I'm going to do this, less distractions, less things. I mean, just this thing.
I think it's similar to our discussion last week. because just like we talked about that you can use different sort of lists that you can cross off apps for different purposes. You can use Nozbe for work, you can use it for personal tasks, or you can use a different app if you prefer. And instead of doing like you used to, putting sort of repeating things that are habits in Nozbe, you can use a separate app for that purpose, right? And I mentioned that I use a separate app for shopping lists. Like just like to-dos is a broad enough category to warrant having multiple apps for different purposes and that have sort of different specialization. I think note-taking as well is such a broad generic category that it might be worth sort of separating a few different apps. Just like not just because you can feel the focus, but also out of technical sort of limitations and considerations that Notes is better for some things because it's in iCloud, and Bear is better for other things because it has checkboxes, because it's automatable, and Ulysses is better for yet another set of things, right?
Exactly. For me, for example, what I like about Ulysses again is this is the library of texts. I don't have to have like folders and files. I have a library of texts, and I can organize it the way I want. So really, for the first time ever, I have really order in of my texts. I know where my texts are. If I want to write something for iMagazine, I know where to go and where to open the new sheet to write something. If I want to write something for our company, before I post in Dropbox Paper, this is what I do. I write in Ulysses first, the article, and then I export it to Dropbox Paper, and then I format it in the Dropbox Paper if I need to, or add some other things. But again, this is where I think. And another thing that you mentioned casually, but I would like to highlight, one power pro tip in Apple Notes is the fact that if you want to take a picture of something, but you don't want it to be in your camera roll, then you open it in a note and add a picture there. Then this picture will not be saved in camera roll. So you will not end up with these stupid pictures of, like, for example, the parking place where you just went, or like stupid things, right? Or some ideas for gifts or whatever. You, instead of that, you open and you note ideas for gifts and you put pictures there. And this way it just makes more sense. This is what, for example, what I did in Evernote is that in Evernote, I removed this option to copy to camera roll. This way, if I took a picture to Evernote, it was just in Evernote. In Apple Notes, right, it's default. So this way you don't, you put this way you keep your camera roll cleaner.
Right. One problem I have with Apple Notes, but I have not yet found a suitable replacement, and I'm not sure if there is one that would satisfy me, is that it's not very automatable. So it lacks all of the power features that third-party apps have. So I can't use workflow to add something to a specific node, to create a new node. I can't use URL schemes to open a particular folder or a particular document, which would be super useful because, for example, as I mentioned, I have like accounting documents in the note. So the ones that will be necessary for me to make an invoice at the end of the month, right? So I have a folder that has it. And I have a task in Nozbe which repeats every month with a checklist to make an invoice. And one of the points is to open Notes and see if it has everything that there needs to be, right? Yeah. And the best I can do is just open Notes through URL scheme, but I can't open the specific folder. And the last point is to archive it, so like move it to a separate folder because there's no archiving in Notes. I just have a separate folder
called archive,
for like archived notes of that sort, and to create a new note. And it's not a big deal, but with it doesn't take me ages. But there's a few things like that, and it would be very easy for me to just spend a couple of minutes making a quick and dirty workflow for it and just link it to a checkbox in Nozbe so that I just click it and it happens. But I can't do it.
You're right. Yeah, right. This is a major drawback of Apple Notes. Yes.
Yeah, and the share extension is not super great either. So very often, again, I take a picture of something or I get a PDF and I want to add it to one of the documents. So I go to share notes, but then every single time I have to go through the folders and actually find the document, and then it just gets added at the front or at the end of it works really. It's annoying. It takes more steps, and it doesn't give me the sense of confidence that I need when I'm adding some important thing to a document that needs to be there.
Yeah, this reminds me of trying to add a photo or an image from your camera roll to some apps, and very often this thing just works very long because I have all my photos there. I have the iCloud photo library, so suddenly it just tries to cache through all of my photos. So it takes lots of time. Yeah, so it reminds me of that.
Well, Apple acquired Workflow some time ago, and just before iOS 11 release. So who knows? Maybe in iOS 12. They'll actually do something related to it and then make all of their apps more powerful and in a even more user-friendly way than Workflow. Yeah.
So with Notes, with Apple Notes, I wouldn't really be pessimistic because they actually keep improving the app, which is
that is true.
Which is surprising for Apple because normally they would just neglect these kind of apps, but they improve it. They keep improving Apple Notes, and as you said,
and actually every year, and not just like every 3 years.
Exactly. So it's not like every 3 years for the iPad version they will just do something extra. No, they really keep improving it, and with Workflow, as you said. I mean, our hopes and dreams are that Workflow is kind of integrated into iOS 12. There is the whole automation thing in iOS 12 that it just works, and then we can hook up to it. And then, for example, we could hook up Nozbe to it in an easy way. It would be just great.
Oh yeah, that's the dream. I have a question. Sell me Ulysses. Like why Ulysses?
All right. So why Ulysses? Everybody was saying this, it's a great app, and I always was thinking, why would I? Because I already also was using AI Writer or Editorial or other apps like this. So Ulysses, first of all, I like the way it stores files. It doesn't store files. It stores sheets of written text, and I can organize them the way I want. Completely the way I want. So this way I have one big library, as I mentioned, of text, of my texts. And there's quick search. So search works very well to find the document that I want. So this way, really, I'm just confident. I'm just putting text there, and they are there, and they're great. So that's one thing.
Can you explain that? Like, what do you mean about the way it stores text?
Yeah. So these are not files. These are not TXT files. These are you can create folders and subfolders and sheets, things like that. And the cool thing is that if you create several sheets, you can merge them together or split them together. You can really manage these documents the way you want, whatever you need. So and you can have a very complicated structure, but I don't. Of course, I like flat structures. But I have a few folders. And each folder can have its own icon and name and whatever. And in these folders, I have my sheets, of written text. So this way, my writing is more organized. I don't have it organized in some Dropbox folders and text files. And again, the search is key, so I can find the document very quickly. And in Dropbox or whatever, it was hard to find the right documents, and they were they were not there. And because it's iCloud and because it's synced all the time, I have access to all of my documents on my iPad all of the time. They're there, downloaded, and because they are text files, they're not heavy, so they can be downloaded really easily and quickly. So the document management is one part of it. Second part of it, of course, is the editor. Editor is very cool. It writes a nice markdown. You can have it full screen without any distractions. It has some nifty features of like counting words and stuff, but it also has the same as writer. It has also this typewriter mode, which I very often use as writer. So very similar. And I just like the writing experience. And of course, it's full markdown. It's a very nice markdown, so it works very nicely. So this is the second part. And third part of Ulysses, as I mentioned to you earlier, is the export. I can really export it to anything. And that for me is the key, because as I mentioned, some people want this format, other format, whatever. I can export it to anything. So I don't have the problem that I have to right now create several workflows of convert markdown to this or that or whatever. I just export from Ulysses, go, and that's why it works very well for me. Like very often, what I do is for some people need something from me, like something written, right? And I just write it in Ulysses. I have, for example, private folder with private notes, and I like private sheets. So I open a sheet, write what I wanted to write to this person, and export it as PDF, and just send them the PDF, and that's it. So it's just so easy. I send them a PDF, a nicely formatted PDF, and they're just surprised that I made this professional PDF for them, right? It wasn't like it was easy because it was markdown, formatted nicely, and that's it. So,
right.
So
interesting.
Yeah. So that's why for me Ulysses. And it syncs with iCloud again, which what I mentioned. So I have the texts offline. I have them accessible at all times. I can search. I can find them very quickly. I can write in a very nice environment, and I can export to anything. That's why Ulysses.
Are you doing the writing with Ulysses only on your iPad, or are you using Ulysses on the Mac too?
On the Mac too. Yes, not very often because I prefer to write on the iPad. It's just where I write. But if I need to correct something or whatever, I open it on Ulysses on the Mac and correct it. And of course, having it on the Mac synced also helps to find the document I want. So
yeah, I definitely would not accept a long form writing app that does not exist on all of my free devices, or at least doesn't sync with iCloud Drive, because even though I prefer doing my long form writing on iPad, just because it's sort of simple, no distraction environment, and the smart keyboard is more than comfortable enough for writing quickly. Exactly. But sometimes I am on my Mac, sometimes I just want to get access to those documents and copy and paste them somewhere else. Also, I often like writing on iPad, and if I have to spend a lot of time sort of editing, working with text, then I do prefer doing that on the Mac. Just like the mouse and big screen, like editing can be more convenient to me on the Mac, but not always. But like having the option, and also like having access to it from the phone anywhere you are, like very important.
Yeah, exactly. And because it's iCloud is saying, I have it on the iPhone. I have all my texts on the iPhone, so I can actually finish the text and send it as a PDF or Word document or whatever from the iPhone if I want to. So yeah, that's why.
All right, I have another question. Have you ever used GoodNotes or Notability, one of those apps?
Exactly. I have used them quite extensively in the past, but Notability, I just prefer than Linea for that, or Linea than Notability. And another thing, actually, both of these apps became obsolete for me in iOS 11 because now I can mark down any PDF I want. So I use the natural way that I open a PDF in iCloud Drive, and I just mark it down. I can sign document like that because I can actually have even signatures there. So I use that a lot. So I sign lots of contracts, and that's why I have a folder contracts in iCloud Drive where I put the PDFs with contracts, and then over there I just sign them using iCloud Drive. Using the iCloud Drive on the app. I mean on the iOS.
I guess I should explain that GoodNotes and Notability are sort of handwriting notes apps for iPad. They can do other things. But you can. They're primarily for writing stuff, not drawing stuff, but with a stylus.
Yeah. So for that, exactly. So for that, Linea is so much better for just right, and for annotating the iCloud Drive. That's why.
Yeah, I agree. For annotating PDFs, the built-in system, just PDF viewer is great. So speaking of ScanBot and whatnot, I keep all of my invoices and other stuff I need for my accounting in iCloud Drive. And some of those things originate through ScanBot.
Yes.
Okay. So sometimes I have bills, paper bills, and I don't keep them if I can avoid it. I just scan them and put them, and they're saved in ScanBot. And in ScanBot, there is a folder where it's there. And if I get an invoice as a PDF, I put it into that folder, right? And then at the end of the month, like what I manage all of this on my iPad. So it's there, and then I sign all of the documents I need. Just I take out the pencil from the pencil holder that's just stuck to my iPad, and I sign all of the PDFs like this, and then I print them. I keep printed copies because I have to. It's sort of the law, but that's only like paper backup. It originates and it's stored and it's managed through my iPad, and I print it at the end of the month, or at the beginning of the month actually, already signed, already managed, already numbered and whatnot. I just batch print it from my iPad. My printer works with AirPrint or whatever it's called, and just put it away.
Exactly. So completely there with that's why I don't need apps like that anymore, which is nice because as you said, the built-in PDF viewer and editor on iOS just works brilliantly with the Apple Pencil, and it's just it's perfect. It's very good.
I also remember following up on like document safekeeping. I remember when you were selling me the idea of using Evernote and like scanning all of the documents. You were giving me an example of keeping all of the scans of all of the sort of health related stuff, like when you were talking like when you're at the doctor with your daughter and whatever, right? And so I don't have a long history of that because I only started scanning new things, and the stuff I already had stored in paper, and I had plenty of stuff before that I just never kept or threw away at some point. But I had some stuff, and like one of those was from like a visit to a doctor that prescribed me like allergy drugs, and I didn't get them immediately because I had my stash. And when they ran out, I realized it, and I wasn't at home. I didn't have the paper documents. I was just at my iPad, and I had the document. I had the document from the doctor, prescribing it, and I just sent an email to my my sort of local clinic with the PDF and said, "Hey, I want this and this," and then just came a few days later to pick it up.
Yeah, you see, it's really cool. I'm happy that you follow up on this, because I see it all the time, and especially in my case when I have three daughters, and you go to pediatricians a lot when you have small daughters. So this way, whenever the doctor is asking, the recent visit, what did they take, or what happened, or whatever, I can just pull out this and tell them, yeah, this happened. They prescribed this and this, and we did this and this. And they're like, how do you know that all? Like how do you know it? It's all here. So for me right now, especially with ScanBot is such a good scanning app. It's when Evernote also has this very very nicely done. So for me, it's just natural. I get the paper from the doctor, I scan it right there. That's it. No need to to think twice. Then I can lose the document. It's not wrong.
Yeah, I have another sort of real life example of where this saved my ass, or at least saved me an hour of wasted time, which is I had to go take care of some sort of official matters at a government office, and I had to fill out some form and take care of this and that. And I could technically send that form online, but I had some doubts about if everything is valid and whatnot. Like for other reason, I decided to go there myself in person and give it there and ask for a few details, right? And I was right to do it because it would be rejected anyway because there was some problem. Like they needed to ask me for a copy of some sort of contract. The details are not important. I'm like, well, I do have it, but I don't have it on me. And the lady is like, well, you will have to bring it. And I'm like, well, I do have a digital copy of it, and if I could send it to you somehow. And I tried, but I was sure I would be laughed off. I mean, it's a government official.
Yeah.
They're not good with technology. She'd be like, what the hell? But she was like, no, that's not a problem. And she just gave me my her email address. So I just pulled out my iPad in front of her, found the PDF already, signed and whatnot, and just sent an email with that PDF to her, and it was done. And I did not have to waste another hour coming back home, printing it and getting back to the place. It was just, I solved the issue in a couple of seconds.
This happened to me several times already. Like this is very, very often that I was surprised that they would say, yeah, this is my email. Send me into my email. And that's it. That's all they wanted. So like, I would pull up my iPhone and send it to them right there, And again, this is the magic of iOS, that if you have it on the iPad, you have it on the iPhone. So this way,
yeah, exactly.
You have it always on you. So whatever document you need or whatever, piece of paper you need. So like this was like very, very often I would just in one of the particular case when I was buying thing, I need to confirm that I'm running a company, and they need just one particular piece of paper to confirm that I'm running the company. And they could have taken it from the internet, but they preferred that I would send it to them. So I would go to I remember always cashier, and the lady would ask me about this paper, and I would say, way ahead of you, it's already in your email inbox. And she was like, okay.
Nice.
So when I was standing in line, I was sending the document to her. So when I got to it, it was already in her email box. And she checked it. Very good. That's correct. Thank you very much. Done.
All right. We have to wrap up in a month. But before we do, I wanted to follow up on the question or an unanswered problem I had with the Magic Spreadsheet on my iPhone.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll link in the show notes to the episode where we discussed this originally, and then when we discussed sort of my problem, because I wanted to, I started tracking all of, a bunch of data, and then added this microjournal thing in a Apple numbers sheet, essentially as, a big spreadsheet. And I managed it for like 6 or 7 years. Like I've done it for a long time. It evolved a lot, but I always did it on my Mac. And I decided like, no, this is stupid. Like this is the sort of thing that I want. Now I need to have it on me all the time, because otherwise I sometimes forget. I forget to do it. And then I remember, early in the evening when I don't have my Mac on me, I might be out of home. I might be traveling without my Mac. And like, if it's on my iPhone, then it's always there. I can always access it. I can always look at it. I can always add to it. And technically I always could, because I was using Apple numbers, right? But it was just very unwieldy. And I was thinking like, if I can replace it with something else. I was thinking of different ideas of maybe using workflow to add stuff to just to a simple text node that I could then, if I needed to, sort of extract data from it, or maybe use web-based automation with Google Sheets, because you can automate Google Sheets and add just stuff to there automatically. So I would just punch stuff in through workflow and add to Google Sheets. But in the end, my solution, it's not very exciting actually, because in the end I stuck with just using numbers, but I I just transformed like completely the structure, the format of the document so that it just fits on the width of the phone.
Oh yes.
Yeah, like I removed everything that I didn't need. I made the font super small. I mean, like the point is that it's annoying when you have to scroll horizontally.
Oh yes.
Right, but this iPhone has very high resolution screen, so I can always like put it closer to my face. So I made the font size super small, just barely big enough for me to see it. And also, like, one of the problems I had that made it super annoying to use is this sort of micro journal I have just one field that with sort of like a short description of today, and usually it sort of goes to 2 lines. Like there's like bullet point, just dash something, new line, dash something. And because Numbers is a stupid app, you can't easily make a new line. You have to long press, next page, add, new line, and only then you can continue typing. Super annoying. Like, first of all, my memory, my muscle memory learned all of this complicated, numbers of steps to add a new line, but I actually just came up with with a ridiculously stupid trick, which is that I just filled in I pre-filled all of the cells with just 3 new lines with dashes.
Okay.
Pre-filled one cell and just dragged it across to the end of the year. And it's just like ridiculously stupid solution, but I just didn't think of it before. and now it's just not a problem, because it's like this simple stupid thing made it annoying. And if it's annoying, I'm not gonna do it. And it's supposed to be like just a good habit, right? Just something that helps me and not makes me annoyed. And this sort of solves it, because I don't have to do 10 steps to add a stupid new line. I just tap to move the cursor to the new line that's already there. And since iPhone 6s, I love 3D Touch for moving the cursor.
Yes, it's very good. It's very useful.
Non-iPhone users, like, you just press hard on the screen above the keyboard, and then you move it like on a trackpad to move the cursor. So that's super useful. And essentially, I've been doing this, and it's fine. It just took a while to get used to, and to make a couple of tweaks here and there to change it. I tried making it a different way, but I couldn't find a solution that would check all of the boxes.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. In the end, also I stick to Apple Numbers for that, for the spreadsheet, and as well, I just made it smaller and made it just easier to use on the iPhone, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I'm on the same boat here. I don't need the microjournal thing, but the rest is more or less the same. So and I find the Magic Spreadsheet very useful, and this year I've been using it very, very well. So yeah.
All right, so I guess next week we talk about traveling easier,
traveling with apps, and simplifying traveling, all these things
using technology.